Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Cracking myself up because we really did have there was one little piece of our banter right before we went on that I'll jump back to in a second, but it's pretty funny. It's just casual being
we always
in here.
We always say we should do like hot mic because
right.
It's the funny stuff is before we jump on the air.
Well, you calling me funny is funny.
Well, no, I actually go back and there's times when I do some social media stuff that I'll actually go back and listen to snippets of an episode and you say the funniest shit and like I don't catch it in real time because I'm trying to figure out what to say next, or I'm posting on social media while we're talking. But you really say some funny quips, man, and just your perspective. I love it. So helpful for me, man. I love being in the coffee shop.
Love being in the coffee shop too. Yeah, we get together, periodically and do these drops. But we've been consistent. Yeah, we've been consistent.
Never missed an episode.
Yeah, right. It's been fun, and again, our mission is to help one alcoholic out there, whether they got one day whether they're curious and today's their first day, or they've got 25 years of sobriety. This is an ongoing process for me anyway to stay sober, and so I need things like podcasts and books and conversations and meetings and little texts in the morning. My guys text me in the morning. I need all these things.
Totally. And speaking of text, I got a text recently, and sometimes, man, it's just the rewards are small, right? Sometimes, sobriety is a thankless job. You do it for yourself, But I got a text from my daughter this week, and she goes, I noticed something. I'm like, what's that? She goes, since you've been sober, you have never missed. Like almost 11 years. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you.
Wow, it's one of those rewards, one of the promises.
Just like our podcast. We have not missed.
Hey, speaking of not missing, we have a table for three today.
And I love table for threes. I love my one-on-ones with you, but
I know.
We have so many great guests.
Yeah, we do. And this one, Justin reached out to you, right? Originally.
Yeah, back on social media.
Yeah.
Out in that world.
And what I love about this, good morning, Justin.
Good morning.
Good morning. What I love about this is Justin's an author, and I aspire to be an author.
You are one.
Yeah.
You do all of our writings.
I do the writings and the blogs, and we'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit for sure, because Justin's just authored a book just released called From Rock Bottom to Redemption, and it's 365 daily lessons on strength, purpose, and rebuilding your life. That defines me right there. Focused on my strength, my purpose, and always, even today, 7 years into this journey, rebuilding my life. I mean, it's great to have you, Justin, and congrats on the book, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I truly appreciate the space here.
Yeah, we love it. So you, the book is going to be published. We're going to drop this. We're really strategic here. We're going to try and drop this the week that your book hits Amazon and other platforms. And so congratulations on the book. How long did it take you to write it?
That's an interesting question, because I would say the writing started long before I decided it was going to be a book.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been sober going on 7 years, and I started writing heavily probably 6 months into sobriety.
Okay.
And I just made it a daily non-negotiable that part of my morning routine was going to include me writing. And
so wait.
I know, you just said something very strong there.
So is that called journaling?
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
Mikey journals.
I always say I journal. I love to write. I love to write stuff, not for publication, but just for my own purposeful edification.
Awesome. I just don't do it.
I know. And my favorite line is, you think it's for chicks. It's not just for chicks. It's for us guys, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, journaling's been one of the most beneficial things to me that I've learned since being sober.
So what does journaling look like? Do you have prompts? Do you just open-mind it, where you just splurge everything that's on your mind?
And are you pen and paper, or are you fingers on a keyboard? Okay, we'll be quiet and listen.
Yeah, so I'm pen and paper, and I journal both ways. Like some days I will just write what is on my mind. Other days I might write things specifically about going ons with my family. But early on, journaling was something I had to learn how to do. So I really relied on prompts. And, for me, Stoicism has played a major role in my recovery. And Ryan Holiday has just great insight on how to apply Stoic themes to our lives. And I actually used his prompts for my journaling every day for probably maybe 5 years now. So his prompts have kind of driven what I decide to write.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so how long, I know we're kind of digging in the weeds here a little bit, because if this worked for you, right, our whole thing is what's working for people's sobriety, right, and share it with other people. So if it's working for you, how long is your non-negotiable time? I love that line. How long was your non-negotiable time when you were really focused on this at the beginning?
Yeah, so like at the beginning, I told myself, because I really struggled, meditation is another non-negotiable, and I would really struggle. I have an all-in mentality. So I felt I needed to write pages. I felt I needed to meditate 20 to 30 minutes. But I learned really quickly that the time does not matter. I just had to start. So there were days I would write 3 sentences. There were days I'd meditate for 2 minutes. But over time, as I learned how to do that and it became easier, towards nowadays, I probably write 10, 15 minutes a day.
Wow. Awesome.
But, it started off, I got to get 3 sentences down today, just starting to train my body and train my mind to do so.
Right. You look, I wish, we don't use the video for publication at this point. Brian and Bianca are pushing us to get with the program and get with the times. But the spot, you have a calmness about you that I see, and kind of a peace about you. You know what I mean? Some people just have that persona.
No, absolutely.
You're not jumping all around. You're very like, hey, I'm here. I'm sober.
But it's also 6 a.m. It's also
6 a.m. Yeah, right. Wake up over there. No, very cool. Very cool. So a little bit about Justin. I mean, what was pre-writing a book? What was Justin's life all about, and what kind of got you to this point?
Yeah, so kind of what happened. I've been a high school teacher for what is it now, 15 years.
Oh, bless you.
And I've always been very high performing. To the outside world, I appeared disciplined, successful. But inside, I was exhausted. I was anxious. I was living with a growing dependence on alcohol and other unhealthy coping habits. I embraced an all-in mentality without boundaries. I poured myself into my work, neglected my emotional and physical health, and I lost all sense of integrity that I had. My life became unmanageable, and I was physically depleted, mentally unstable, and spiritually empty. So I just reached a point where I knew I could not live in that way. It started with me going into treatment, which wasn't my idea. I was kind of told by people in my life, this is what's going to happen. And there was kind of a list of things that I was going to need to do. But, in treatment, I admitted I had the problem.
Someone called that an intervention.
Yes, an intervention of sorts, right?
Right.
Of sorts, yes. Yep. It was my children's mother and her parents and a few members of our church. So
sometimes you have excellence thrust upon you.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So that was kind of the turning point. I finally sought help instead of hiding. I pursued treatment, counseling, accountability, and I really started to rebuild my life around discipline rather than impulse. So I focused on small daily decisions instead of dramatic promises. I learned to take responsibility without blaming others. And my faith became central. I'd always grown up in the church from the time I was little, but this was the first time that I would say faith became a central part of my life. Structure became essential. And I slowly began replacing destructive habits with constructive ones, one decision at a time. And, today I'm sober and grounded. I appreciate, you mentioning the word peace because, today I have peace, and that's something I never experienced the first 32 years of my life. I'm still a teacher and a coach, but I lead differently. And I prioritize my presence as a father, which is something I never did. I value peace over ego. And I understand that like redemption it's a process, not a single moment. So I continue to try to cultivate gratitude and self-awareness and daily discipline. Always being mindful that recovery is not something that I've completed, but it's something that I live. And I would say my story, it's not about hitting rock bottom. It's about discovering that rock bottom can become a foundation.
I love that. Hey, can I stop for a minute and say, this is why I was so excited to have you join us in the coffee shop. I mean, I can't be writing fast enough with there are gems in here that can be taken. We could have whole episodes on some of these gems.
No, I would
yeah, it's good
8
stuff.
gems down.
Yeah, and that's what. So I'm going to kind of jump around here because I got ADD. So the book, takes the way you communicate your struggle, your journey, is very comfortable to me, and it's packed full of little nuggets like that you can just kind of highlight on a page and then ponder. I love what you said about looking for inspiration from Ryan Holiday, right? And the quantity over the quality over the quantity, right? So I found in reading your book that I would stop, because the purpose isn't to get through the 400 pages. The purpose is to let it get through to me, right? And I found in your writings that there are small, powerful nuggets that I could stop and just kind of ponder the importance of that and the implication of that in my life. And I just want to say I just love your writing style. I'm very, very, very comfortable with it, and you got a lot to say. I mean, you just in that quick paragraph, in that quick 5 minutes, gave us a wealth of little nuggets that we could chew on, and would help us in our journey towards this recovery that, as you said, is a journey, not a destination, this process. Wow.
Yeah, so going to the story part, right? You got to the intervention. Was there 1, 2, or 3 things that kind of led to the intervention, or was it, just a process of many instances or episodes over time?
Yeah, was there a cop behind you when you got intervened, flashing his lights? I say, was there a policeman behind you flashing his lights? No.
No. Like I luckily never ran into any legal trouble. But my children's mom and her family, I wore a mask in public. People were shocked when they found out that Mr. Kinney was going to treatment, but she and her family knew the truth. And for 10 years, they saw me slowly destroy who I was as a person. They saw me just emotionally batter their daughter. So they got the behind the scenes look that the world did not get. And they just said, this is enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You hurt the ones you love, right? I mean, and just, did you find that when you were going through it, I thought I was only hurting myself. I thought I was living my life. I really didn't think I was impacting people around me, but yet it became so obvious once I had clarity, just the damage I had done.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I pulled out of Justin's stuff is, he had a post where he says, your choices mm-hmm. shape someone else's world, right? So we may not think that they shape them, but absolutely, but that's kind of like the whole big book. Hey, Justin, quick question. When in part of your sober journey and recovery, does it include the 12 steps?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so
Yep.
there's a story in the big book where a guy comes out of the tornado shelter. Look, Ma, the wind stopped blowing. The whole town's obliterated, right? And he's like, oh, because there's just so much inward focus. You're not considering other people, but absolutely, and I'll say it again, your choices shape someone else's world. So Justin, I'm going to try to cut to a key part of the story here. You used the word redemption, right? And I love that word. That is, a key word, part of my journey. And I love how you said it's a process. Trust me. For me, it took years. I'm on the slow train. Have you had a chance to do an 8th and 9th step with the mother of your children, with her parents?
Yeah. So, when I went into treatment, I mentioned I'd been high performing, and I'm someone who, if there's a task, I want to get it done. So I was delirious enough that, by day 5 in treatment, I convinced myself I was already on step 8 and 9.
Overachiever.
Of course.
Right. Right. I was like, when I get out of treatment, I'm going to have these 12 steps done. I'm going to be fixed. Life is going to go back to be normal. Everything will be great. Which just shows the cloud of insanity that I was in early sobriety. So when I was in treatment, one of the things they had asked is that we would cease communication for 6 months, to give them time to heal and to give me time to heal. And so I was unable to call or talk to them, but I wrote them letters from treatment. And, at the time I thought they were fix-alls. And looking back, I can only laugh at myself for what they must have thought.
I love it.
5 days without alcohol, and here he is trying to apologize for 10 years of being that tornado that the big book talks about. But, once I learned that, the 12 steps are a lifelong journey and not a 1-week inpatient treatment assignment, I did later on make amends to her and her parent.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, I love it. In fact, that's one of the things, when we spend time talking about the 8th and 9th step, certainly treatment, right? People are like, oh man, I'm getting sober. I got 2 weeks sober. And I'm, just like you said, and one of the things I brought up before is, one of the most brilliant, wise things I've ever heard a sponsor say is, just that, a sponsee, and I've heard this conversation. A sponsee says, man, look, I've been sober for 90 days, and how long do I got to put up with her shit? She doesn't trust me, and she still looks over my shoulders, and I've been sober for 90 days, and how long do I got to put up with this? Sponsor very wisely, just very calmly says one word. He goes, until. Mm-hmm. Because we think, right, that we control everything, and it's funny because my counselor in my recovery said the same thing. He goes, look, you're never going to see your daughters again. And that wasn't acceptable to me. He goes, wait, I thought you surrendered. And then I wrote the letter, and then he never mailed the letters, mm-hmm. And it took years for that redemption to start to take roots because you needed living amends. Nobody wanted to hear my words, your words anymore, right? Because
actions. What are your actions?
Right.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. So purpose. I want to kind of hold on that for a second. So what's the purpose of the book? What's Justin Kinney's purpose? You talk about purpose on the cover. What is your purpose?
It goes back. It really aligns well with your guys' mentality of just help that one person. When I wrote the book, I did not set out to write a book. I got to the point to where I planned on printing 6 copies and giving them all to my children some days to maybe help them get through life. And, then I thought about the books that helped me in recovery, the people that helped me in my recovery. And, I thought it was something I could do to help others that are in the terrible position that I was once in. So, my book, I would say the purpose is rebuilding your life after hitting rock bottom. Mm-hmm. And it's not theory, it's lived experience. And, the purpose or the focus is on daily discipline, faith, responsibility, and small, consistent choices. And my book's really structured around a one day at a time mentality. There's 52 chapters, and each chapter has 7 sections in it. So, I urge readers to read one section a day and, meditate on it and think about how it can be applicable to their lives. So it's really structured around practical lessons that can help the readers confront excuses, build habits, take ownership of their actions, and develop steady character. So, and I mean, it's written for anyone who feels stuck, defeated, overwhelmed, and needs a clear path forward. So, with the main message to the reader, like, you can rebuild your life, but you have to do the work. Nobody's going to do it for you. Yeah.
How do you measure against your purpose? Glenn loves facts, right? Data. So how do you measure? I'm asking this for my own benefit, right? How do you measure success on your purpose, right? So being a better father, right? It's, how are you measuring? And I love that. And I also love the fact that you initially you wrote this maybe just for your kids, just 6 copies. I love that. Now you're sharing it with the world, which is fantastic. But how do you measure your success based on your purpose?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Like, in my mind, when I think of, things that we measurable, I think of data that shows the evidence. I think of numbers, and I think of hard facts. And, I guess for me, it would be, as I do my daily review, as I look back at, my life every month when I do, a self-check-in inventory, am I seeing sustainable growth? Am I seeing in action and word the person that I'm trying to be? When moments arise with my kids, whereas maybe 10 years ago I would have lost my temper and screamed and yelled, do I see myself now responding in a calm, kind way to where we still can maybe address the behavior, but it's not going to put everybody on the house on eggshells like it once did. So I don't think there's a clear-cut measuring stick for this, but I think it's more observational and just realistic with who am I and how do I do things.
Right. I have a measuring stick. So me as a tornado, did a lot of damage with my son. And he's an adult now, and still held a lot of anger towards my decisions and my actions when I was out there drinking and drugging, right? And there were several examples when I did my 9th step with him. There were several examples that he brought up that were reflective of our. So we got up from that 9th step breakfast and. Dinner, I'm sorry. We ate dinner. We ate breakfast at dinner. And he gave me a quick hug, right? And I walked away from that, and I saw him a couple of weeks later, and the hug was just a little longer. Maybe 1,000, 2 1,000. He went to 2 1,000. Now, with the relationship we have, I get a 6 1,000 hug. And to me, that's measurable,
6x,
and deeply impactful. And so I know I'm doing the right things. So that's why I keep coming to the podcast studio. That's why I keep learning from books like From Rock Bottom to Redemption. I keep growing because I want those exponential, those little, not exponential, the little increases in hug ratios. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So we're winding up here, but what I'd love to do, we gave a little introduction, but I'd love to have you back next week, and let's unpack a couple of these, a couple of things that really drive you, the real gems, the kind of the cornerstones of your recovery now. And let's share those with. Will you come back again? Before you do, I got a question, just in case people don't come back next week. How will people find out about the book From Rock Bottom to Redemption by Justin Kinney? Where will they find that book? Will it be on Amazon? And
yes, it'll be on Amazon.
Do you have a preferred book vendor though that you would prefer to go with, or is Amazon fine?
Amazon is great, yeah, but it'll be in bookstores as well.
Do you have a website as well, Justin?
I do not have a website. I just have social media.
How do they find you on Instagram? Yeah.
Yeah. So Instagram, it's Justin_Kinney_0609.
Okay. What's the significance of 0609? Is it your birthday June 9th?
It is. Yeah, that's my sobriety date.
Oh, that's your sobriety date. Oh, nice. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. You'll come back next week and we can unpack this a little bit more?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this has been I've got notes on top of notes. I gotta take a break and determine my notes.
Refresh our coffees.
Love
it.
All right, Justin, thanks, man. See you next week.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.